what's up you guys, this is Rob from Gay Guy Plays, and today on The Quick Draw, we're gonna scour our brains for the bright side when we take a look at the Dark Split Sword. Alright, so you guys know that I am a huge cheerleader for new and interesting mechanics, and as of late there's been a big influx of experimental weapons, but more specifically, experimental weapons that perform just under standard usability, which to be honest with you is a major feel-bad moment for me, because while I like new and interesting, I don't necessarily want to lower my standards just to make it work. But today I'll swallow my rage, amongst other things, and we will do our best to turn a frog into Ryan Reynolds. And hopefully, more swallowing will ensue. Now, you can pick up the Dark Split Sword in the Tenno Lab of your clan dojo after you've completed the appropriate research. In addition, you're gonna want to make sure that you have a pair of dual skana on hand, as it is a component in the crafting. Now, if you're a collector or mildly OCD and have no intentions of not having everything in the game, you can always pick it up in the market, pre-built along with a weapon slot and a catalyst for 225 plat. Now, its primary damage type is radiation, which is not something we normally see on weapons. With this as its base damage, the Dark Sword is quite good against alloy armor and robotic enemies. However, it will suffer against the infested, fossilized infested, and standard corpus shielding. With all of that in mind, be sure to equip the appropriate elemental combo in order to deal the optimal amount of damage. Okay, so let's start with the most interesting part of this weapon, which is its ability to swap forms between a heavy sword and dual swords. Now, the way you do this is by equipping either a heavy sword stance or a dual sword stance. Doing so will actually alter the weapon's current stats. The heavy sword features 5% more crit and status, bringing it to a whopping 10% crit chance and 20% status chance. It even got 15 more points of base damage, bringing it to a staggering 80. Just in case you couldn't tell, that was all sarcasm. Statistically, the heavy sword is pretty shit, with its base damage and critical chance being tied for the lowest of heavy weapons. The only real bright side to this is the fact that its attack speed sits at a baseline of 1, which isn't actually terrible for a heavy weapon. And because its base damage is radiation, you might be able to score a confusion proc, which may draw fire away from you long enough to actually land enough hits to finally kill your enemy. I'm doing real good with this bright side stuff, aren't I? Now, with a base damage of 65, a crit chance of 5%, and a status chance of, well, who really cares, right? Why in good graces would we even be interested in using it in its dual sword form? Well, simply put, it's got one of the highest spin attacks in game, with only the Boltus in Dual Commas Prime outperforming it. Combined with the mod Maiming Strike, which gives you a flat 90% chance to crit on a slide attack, alongside Body Count and Blood Rush, and you will be seeing more red than a 9-incher with a hefty amount of girth. Now, one key thing to remember when using the Maiming Strike mod is that you will only be guaranteed that crit chance while you're holding down your crouch key, i.e. you cannot tap crouch to initiate the slide, then release before your attack connects. It might take a bit of finger work at first, but once you loosen up a bit, sliding in properly won't be much of an issue. Now, speaking of issues, can we talk? Okay, so as of late, we've been hit with a slew of weapons that have really cool mechanics, but whose performances have been slightly substandard. Gone are the days of the powerhouse experiments like the Amprex, Cyanoid Simulor, and the Tonkor. The only remotely interesting things we seem to get these days are the likes of the Stradivar, Toxicist, and now the Dark Split Sword. Cool ideas for sure, but I'm not gonna run around with the Dark Split Sword in a T4 mission where I'm actually expected to perform. This, honestly, is kind of like kink. The movies want you to believe that it's like 50 Shades of Grey out there, and men that look like Dorian Gray are ready to bust out the leather and whips. But in real life, you get some truck driver with jacked up facial hair that kinda looks like he's gonna murder you and dump your dead body in some alley somewhere. I mean, listen, just because I'm looking for more than vanilla doesn't mean that I want to stare at some beer-bellied biker's O-face. I want my Fight Club sex and my Fight Club Brad Pitt, just like I want my heavy Dark Split Sword to perform, at the very least, like a standard heavy sword. I mean, if I'm gonna get jackhammered, it would be nice if they had the body of someone who looks like they've been jackhammering. Now, let me step down from my soapbox, and let's get back to the quick draw. So, all in all, the Dark Split Sword is interesting, but ever so slightly subpar. Its heavy sword setup is underpowered and only performs marginally well with the body count and blood rush combo. The story is similar with the dual sword setup, however using a niche build that forces you to use a very specific playstyle does make it a good bit more effective. Now it does come with an innate V polarity, which slightly makes up for the fact that its stance lock can be a bit of an issue, as the only stance it polarizes with is Swirling Tiger. That aside, I am glad that DE is going out on a limb and experimenting with these kind of mechanics, because at the end of the day, the only way you know what you like to play with is with a bit of experimentation. So thank you all for watching another episode of The Quick Draw. If you haven't caught it, be sure to check out May's edition of the month in Warframe, as well as my latest Overwatch loot box opening. Now don't forget to do all the things that I ask you to do at the end of every one of these, and as always, stay tuned to watch me objectify men the same way they do women, here at A Gay Guy Plays. Okay, is it just me, or does this guy look high as hell? Did they make Pothead face? What's going on, DE? What are you trying to tell us about the Tenno?